Hello and welcome to Just Keep Writing While Black, a podcast for writers.
By writers.
To keep you writing.
I'm Marshall.
I'm Elle.
And I'm Brent.
And joining us this week, that voice you just heard, is LD Lewis. Thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This is this is yet another podcast that I'm doing all of a sudden. So excited to be on this side of the medium and not, on the side that actually has to orchestrate it.
Yeah, no, that would fall to us to do all the orchestrating.
Yeah, we'll do all that.
Yeah. So I will take it away with my introduction. I will try to keep it short. So
and I'm so damn long. Okay.
Well, and I'm laughing because me and Elle have been friends for so long. I can probably just keep talking forever. But yeah, we've been friends. I don't know what 7 years now. About 7, 6, like that, something like that. Yeah, right. Yeah. So when I was very much a naive young writer and didn't know anything about the industry or literally anything, I was invited into a writing group, and one of those people in that writing group happened to be Elle. And I think we were exchanging stories to beta, and I completely lost my shit and fanboyed out and persistently was DMing her about this story. And we kind of became friends from there. And eventually we were part of the founding of Fiyah Magazine, which, by the way, just won a Hugo.
Woo! Congratulations.
Yeah, so that's awesome. And I wanted to bring LD on here today because, she does a huge amount of community work. If you follow anything about the amount of initiatives that have happened to try to help Black writers secure a more stable place in science fiction and fantasy, LD was probably a part of it in some way, shape, or form. But that tends to be what most people want to talk to her about. And in those conversations, they forget that she is a damn good writer too. And so today I wanted to bring her on so we could talk about her writing for a change. So yeah, we're going to be focusing on that.
And real quick, before we get to that, I did forget one thing. I wanted to let people know this is going to be our last Just Keep Writing While Black episode for the month of February for Black History Month. Right. And so if you've been enjoying getting weekly episodes, please, jump on our Patreon, jump in our Discord, support the show, and give us 5 stars. 5 stars? I don't know. Give us all the stars and write us a review and we'll read it on the show.
Yeah, I think the 5 stars in the review is what a logarithm needs or whatever. Yeah, so do that.
And any help we can get is great because we have been really doing some awesome stuff this month, and I'm stoked to wrap it up with LD. So welcome, and let's jump in. What you got, Brent?
Okay, so first and foremost, what do you consider to be a good story?
What do I consider to be a good story? For my own taste, because I'm
for your own
inspiring stuff for other people, and I don't even know what I like anymore.
No, I'm for your own taste because when she says that, I forgot to throw one little accolade in. So LD also happens to be a reader for LeVar Burton Reads podcast.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I'm all over the place. What do I consider a good story?
Yes, yes.
I love secondary world things. It's exciting to me to get to see what an author can come up with that isn't based in our world, something that they can put together organically that still makes sense to, human beings as readers. I love a good lush world build. I love complex characters. I love a well-defined villain, not some character that had it bad in life, and now they're mean to everyone, and so now we have to empathize with this thing. I love good, pure villainy, so that we all know who it is that we're supposed to be rooting against. I like a character-driven story. I think industry-wise, we are kind of pushed toward plot-driven narratives. I like things that meander a little bit, let you get to know the world, let you get to know the characters. Things that are cinematic and vibrant, and those are good words. I think I'll end there.
Yes,
Yeah.
those are very good words. Yeah, no, okay, that's cool. So, I started off with that one because I wanted to make sure that I knew you would bring up some of these things that I love about your writing. So it makes total sense that what things that you look for also bleed into your own writing. So, okay, so this question, I'm changing it a little bit just because I want to focus on your writing and not so much on everything else that you're doing. So, what?
It's okay if you touch on that stuff. It's kind of like integrated at this point.
It is. I just know. I think we've known each other enough that I know how to like tiptoe around it like a little landmine. I know which ones.
Yeah.
I know which ones to avoid. But I'm gonna alter this one question that we tend to ask writers. For the sake of you trying to talk about your writing a little more. So, what 3 words would you use to describe your own writing? Like adjectives, whatever. Like
they don't have to be 3 words linked. Just 3
they
words.
don't have to be. They could just be like 3 separate words that come to mind.
Let's see. Lush, colorful. If I can hyphenate, like deliciously dark. Like if we can make that a thing.
I'll take that. Yeah.
It's things that aren't grim dark, but are dark and still stylish and still not going to kind of drive you toward nihilism when you read it.
Yeah. I think from Witch to Queen to God definitely fits that deliciously dark kind of mode where you kind of have this world where this very not nice woman is has decided like, well, you're going to make me powerful and I don't care what it takes to make it happen. And so tell us a little bit about that story. Like what kind of inspired it and like why that POV in that particular short story?
From Witch to Queen and God, which was published, I want to say in the inaugural issue.
Yeah, it was the first one.
Yeah, of Mermaid's Monthly. I do that a lot. I like to be the first story in a lot of things for some reason. That story, it started out as it is really, it's a vignette of a character I put into a larger universe. I write a lot of vignettes. I mentioned I like a character-driven narrative. Vignettes are the prime opportunity to be able to do stuff like that. And it follows an iteration of the famed sea witch, Ursula. And it's kind of an origin story type thing. She used to be human, used to be, a witch who lived on land, and noticed some sea gods were sort of abdicating their roles a little bit. And there was a power vacuum. She stepped in to fill it, was, discontent with not being worshipped. And so found some, I guess we can call it anti-colonialist methods of pursuing her own worship and her ambitions and things. And I enjoy seeing Black women especially get to be able to do that. They get to have ambition. They get to actually exercise the power that they wield and grow those sorts of things to their own ends, whether they be good, bad, or somewhere, more agnostic. And it was also an experiment. That's my only story where I have a character who's mute. So it was an experiment in trying to figure out how to convey language, non-verbally in character writing. So got to play a bit with sort of the mermaid to human magic, got to do the origin story stuff, got to chop off some heads. And yeah, it was just a good time.
No, it reads like it. It reads like you just had fun writing it the whole way through. So, that one is in a secondary world, and you mentioned liking stories that like have secondary worlds. What do you feel? This might be the one question that leads into some of your other stuff. What do you feel the value in secondary worlds are for Black writers?
For one, we don't have to tie any of our story structure, any of our world building, any of the conflict to stuff that we have historically experienced. The things that our identities tend to be rooted in if you ask somebody who's not Black. So if we want to lean into being explorers or something of other worlds, we don't have to root that in having once been explored ourselves. We don't have to have what does exploration look like without the colonization aspect, the stuff that we experience. So doing it in a secondary world, we can sort of play around with that and answer those questions without having to rely on historical trauma. I think it's also important too because we don't get to do it a lot professionally. I mean, if you're pursuing traditional publishing because of the gaze that you have to play into in order to make it, to a certain level, we're not often. I won't say never because there are some very good examples. We're in a very good age in terms of speculative fiction written by Black people specifically. But being able to do that just as storytellers, not as aspiring to published authorship, I think it does something therapeutic. It's cathartic for us to be able to imagine those worlds as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's why I love them. That's why I love secondary worlds. Like, I think we talked about it a little bit when we had Jen on here, Marshall, in terms of like, like sometimes I just want to ride a dragon. Can I ride a dragon and be Black? Why do I have to be punch dragons too? Like, can I just be? So yeah, so no, that's I think that's the power of secondary worlds. Oh,
well, can I circle back too on the other two words you used, lush and colorful? Like, I mean, someone might say those are almost in contrast to deliciously dark?
Yeah.
So, and I've read your stuff, like, and I'm with you on the lush and colorful, but like, what lens are you looking at that through, and how does that apply to your work?
Okay, so brief backstory. I have a chromesthesia, so my brain sort of is rewired to mix up sound and color. So I do a lot of world building that's based in color, and those colors are inspired by like playlists and things that I make. Music and stuff feeds into things like that. So when I say colorful, it's the use of color in world building to evoke certain atmospheres or to build certain character identities or certain archetypes, things like that. Lush, it's the degree of detail that I am or am not permitted to do, depending on what the format is. I am a verbose writer. I tend to have to cut down a lot of things. So I do a lot of very, very immersive world building type stuff. I don't see it as kind of like the polar opposite of darkness. I think dark is a theme. It can be certain events within a story or a through narrative of the story can be dark thematically, but that has nothing to do with the richness and the vibrance of the world or the setting that the story is taking place in. So if I can, do sort of a neon drenched, paranormal, sapphic murder mystery type thing, but at the root of that is murder, murder and vice and assorted other sins and things. That's dark, but without losing the capacity to use color.
So I didn't make Marshall read that one, but that is actually I love Dizzy. That's such a cool character.
One that I did read, and sorry to cut you off real quick, because you said you're a very verbose writer, and that first, well, I guess technically second paragraph, from witch to queen and god, like, was that paragraph just? I mean, there's something so I can see this woman walking out of the ocean, and that is just such a powerful, amazing image. But hearing you say that, I'm like, I could read 5 more paragraphs of this. So yeah, was this one of the ones you had to like really trim down?
So let me see. So this one was with my vignettes. I'm using those as experiments too, to try and write shorter and shorter lengths. Like I got into writing novel length. So my first my first novel that I pitched to an agent, also got me my agent. It started out as the first third of like a 300,000 word story or book or whatever. And then when I started pursuing professional, whatever, and you go to look at these word counts, and they're like, oh, they don't recommend anything over 100K, and I'm like, oh, well, shit. So I had to. That became a trilogy as opposed to one gigantic volume. So when I do, let me see. I think Signal. You read Signal. I think I sent that to Brent to be like, have him read this.
Yeah. I don't know if I sent him a Signal, but I read
you didn't send me that one.
Okay,
so my fault. But I read Signal.
I blame Brent.
Signal. It's a it's a very short. Was it present tense? I don't know. It was something like 2,000 words, and that's the shortest story I've ever written.
Oh wow!
So with the vignettes, I'm learning, better economy of words. If you just let me write a novel, I'll write a novel and it'll be 500,000 words, and you're welcome. But for the shorter stories, for From Witch to Queen and God, that was just like I spat it out because this was the origin I wanted for this character in this world. I think I had to do exactly one editorial pass on it. And I don't think much of anything got cut. So that's probably one of my tightest stories ever. And I doubt I will ever be able to replicate it again. But that's I think the opening of it was very emblematic of the way I approach setting.
Yes, setting is something you do so well. Like all of your, even though I've read like everything, all of your locations stand out. Like they just each have this like distinctiveness to it. So, okay, I'm gonna ask a broad question, then I'll bring it in. All right, so broad question. I kind of asked Jen this, but I want to ask you a similar thing too. So when you're creating a secondary world, what are the 5 elements of that world that you need to really, not just need, but you want to understand before you can dive into it?
Geographic proximity in the setting, because that determines climate. It determines architecture to a certain degree. It determines what the people look like, whether they're native to that area or have emigrated from somewhere else, and so have adapted certain features in order to live in a certain climate. I probably let off too heavy with that, but that flora and fauna. So I like, all those things inform what the people there eat, where and how they obtain their warmth, what local economies and stuff look like. What art looks like there. There's another novel I've written that will not be seeing the light of day anytime soon. But the people there are all blind, and so their architecture, their communication systems, most things end up being tactile. And so that kind of informs the rest of the world and how they engage with the seeing world outside of that locality. I gotta do more of that, actually. I would like to work it into more things because it ended up being really cool. How many things was that? Was that 2?
I think that's 3.
I think you're 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
3.
Okay, so if I can do art and music as 2 separate things, just because music for me again leads to it sets tone and atmosphere. It provides insight into religions and so on, so forth. And then history. I do, on average, about 200 years of back history from the starting point of any story. I think that's rooted in our concept of generational trauma, in how, our present doesn't exist without certain elements of our past. Those things kind of feed into each other. And then I end up having to cut a bunch of it because not relevant. But the history, I think, is a big part for me. I end up filling up entire notebooks with it. And I end up actually being able to mine those histories for additional stories, which is what happened with From Witch to Queen and God and Chesirah and a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, I was say because I know Chesirah was from another universe.
Yeah.
Well, you can feel in that one too how much history and stuff is there. Like that story blew me away. Just so you know, I listened to that. Was following along earlier today. I was like, I love everything about this. I want to listen to it again. It was so good. I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I just it was perfect in that format. So it was wonderfully done.
Thank you. It was my first shorter than novel length thing to ever be written, and ended up selling, which is it's biased because obviously it ended up selling to the magazine I work on, but also it just ended up being good. So right. I'm glad people enjoyed it.
It was well loved. That's what I was just about to say. Like, even though, despite that, it was a very well loved story. So yeah, one of my favorites. Okay, so we talked kind of like, so now I'm gonna kind of bring it in. So we mentioned how, your settings just like come to life. So when you're like approaching writing a setting, like what are like some of the things in the back of your mind that you're like drafting it out and then maybe editing it? Like, what are the things you want readers to notice the most about like your settings?
I like for them to be able to just sit in it for a minute. I don't like for plots to move at breakneck speeds when they don't have to. I like to be able to just, contemplate a leaf for a second, have a still moment in a setting while a character, is thinking or processing or in transit to something else. I think when those things are less important, like action heavy scenes, if I've done that work in advance, they can see the action and the story actually, play out the way I envision it. And I like to think that those action things are more cinematic to me than the setting building parts. So I like to have both of those things, but I don't think that the latter works without my doing, the world building work for the former to get it to play out the way I want you to read it.
Okay, that makes total sense. I mean, I've read enough of it. I've read everything.
Yes.
And yeah, it makes sense because like I think you have a very good job of like being the cameraman and being like, we're freezing right here. Enjoy this moment, and we're going to zoom in. And I want you to.
Okay. All right, that's what I'm going for. So that works. All right.
Yeah, no, that's how I've always felt. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, the camera's panning over here, and we're going to focus on this for a second. Enjoy this beautiful background. Like, it's
my very Studio Ghibli kind of thing that I just want to bring to all the stories. Just like a moment of chill out and look at this amazing things I've created for a second. Like, enjoy this, and then we're going to get into some murder. So.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I know you love those movies. So, okay, I'm just going, why do you love those movies and how do they inform your writing?
Oh, they're so pure.
Yeah.
It's, it is, a Ghibli movie is like the storytelling equivalent of like a deep breath. You just kind of, everything else, the tension and the chaos of the world fall away, and you're just like in this pastoral scene for a minute, with these frighteningly large but also terribly endearing creatures. And there's no tension whatsoever. I think I try to work a lot of those moments into what I'll say are the favorite iterations I have of my stories, the things that I can just keep to myself because they make a story too long or whatever, have to get cut at some point. But I can always go back and revisit them. And if they feel like that deep breath moment to me, like a Ghibli movie does, then I did what I set out, to do for my purposes. Nobody else may ever get to read it, but it's there. And I think that's what makes my own reading enjoyable, to go back to an experience, because I don't do that a lot. Like I'm very much like, okay, this is done, next thing. And that's writing, that's projects, that's, everything else. So those moments are important to me as a writer. Like, okay, I was having a good day here. I wasn't, rushing to try and get words out to the page or whatever. I was just living in this world that I built, and it's a very nice moment.
Okay. So this might be hard. It may not be hard. Which one is your favorite? Okay,
The
maybe it's hard.
movies?
Yes. Yeah.
Spirited Away, but that also feels easy.
Okay, I'll give you top 3.
Spirited Away, Totoro, obviously.
Love Totoro.
Howls, I think, is a good third.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I feel like yes. That.
Okay.
That fits with what I know of your work. So yeah.
Yeah, it was between Howls and Princess Mononoke, whose art book I have up here, but I think Howls edges it out slightly.
Yeah, Princess Mononoke is my hands down favorite. I like that one. Yeah.
I think I watched Totoro with my kids when they were younger countless times, so that's probably my favorite just because of that. Just how many times I've seen it. They love that movie.
And that just, for me at least, that really ties into like why I feel like, among other reasons, that your worlds feel so like yes, they're deliciously dark, but they're also just fantastic. Like they have like, you can tell there's imagination in them. Like, sometimes you have these secondary worlds that they might as well just be historical fiction. Like they just feel like historical fiction, and the person just didn't want to do research, as opposed to like, as opposed to, it's so true. Yep. Yeah. As opposed to actually like building a world with imagination and like crazy shit that you would never see before. And like, and what I love that you do is that like you said, you don't have to, people can just be Black without having to tie any like racism or oppression or anything else into it. Like they just get to exist in these worlds, because why should we take the horrors of our own world into our imaginative worlds too? I mean,
what does your world and what does your imagination look like without those things as identifiers?
Right.
And I think that once you ask yourself that question, and maybe, look at different art forms and, different artists, and, the way they kind of dream stuff up, you're like, oh, I'd never considered even approaching this specific thing differently. What does that look like, from my mind? And I like when we actually get to do that on the page.
Right.
Can I ask, we haven't talked about the other story that Brent sent me over yet.
Oh, Moses.
Can we talk about that
for
a minute? Because this is the first one I read.
Oh, sorry.
No. I'm glad I did it this way, because this whole conversation, it makes a lot of sense. So I just need to know. So what was you're playing with so much in this story. Like there's so many things going on. PTSD, there's this magic element, there's all this stuff going on. So what was I don't even know what I want to ask. Like, what was the idea for the story? And just what was the idea for the story?
It was, so with all of my vignette type things, all of my character based stories, I tried to experiment with something different. So my novella, A Ruin of Shadows, was me experimenting with writing a much older female protagonist. And so Moses happened because I didn't see addicts or addiction represented in speclet.
Yeah.
And that was, it was kind of a, I wonder if people are afraid of the subject matter. or if they're unable to write it compellingly or with any kind of empathy. And I have an addiction background. So it was kind of a way for me to sort of process those things and see how a character who, looked like a young me would fare, with, or like what would the roots of that addiction look like within a sci-fi fantasy kind of situation. So I have Moses, and she's had this, what I'll call a gift, since she was at least very little. There's no way to know whether there are more people with powers like this throughout the world or anything, because none of that's, important. This is a very, character specific kind of thing. But an inability to control it and having it go off kind of in the wrong direction. And then a subsequent inability to process trauma. Those are things that actually lead to addiction. Past mistakes, past trauma, past, errors in relationships, things like that. They have the capacity to ruin very real people. And in this case, it ruined someone with a power. And then there's the ending for me. I don't know, spoil my own shit. It was important for me to leave the ending kind of open. I wanted her humanized, and people who have, similar life experiences. I wanted them humanized. I wanted a redemptive moment for her, but ultimately with addiction, those moments can be fleeting. So you don't know if it's going to be, a straightening of a path that she's going to stay on, or if, this was just a moment and there's, more things to recover from in the future. But I think that it's going to continue to go down as like probably the most important story I think I've written, or at least the most personal. I don't think I'd ever put myself, I'm not really like a self-insert writer. But this story was probably the most important for that.
Well, and I totally got that at the ending, leaving it open. I thought that was really, really powerful. And I want to ask you, just because some of my experiences growing up, starting with that scene, with the bullying scene, and having that, like, that to me drew me in immediately, because I've been in that moment and I wanted to vanish somebody like right then and there. And so I just want to say how much that spoke to me. And I was like, okay, I got to keep reading your stuff. Like
that was drawn from a real life thing. I had I was walking home from school one day, and I had my little sister. She's 2 years younger than me. I had her with me, and this bully would just like not stop, and we were just like in this empty parking lot on the way home, and things almost escalated. But like a neighbor came out and was like, chill out. But I was just like, I have a temper. So I had that moment where I was like if I could kill you right now and get away with it, I'd be into it. But I was in like 5th grade. So yeah, that was definitely pulled from real life. And then I think having my sister present for that moment in my life, I think that fleshed out kind of Moses' relationship with her sister. As well. There was definitely some diversion in how these things played out, but having that element in there, I think for me was important too. It's important to have somebody who's supportive in Addict's life or whatever. And it was a very important story. I'm not going to reread it a whole bunch of times, but I'm glad that I got it out there.
No, it was so important.
And you're right. That scene with them in the bathroom was just really one of those moments like, I'm here for you always. It was very much a sisterly. It was like, look, I get you. I see what's happening, but I'm still going to be here and you can come home. And I think that's why that last line is so powerful too. So I loved that story. I know obviously there was a lot behind it, but I thought it was really, really well done. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, I mean, me and Lakeisha talked about this in private, but that story like affected me deeply, and I'm trying to get emotional as I talk about it, but so my ex was an addict, so I understand like that in that beginning where they had that talk, and she was just like, you can come home, and what I appreciated about it is that, so often I think in media, you don't see addicts treated with any kind of tenderness. Like, it's just like, you're an addict, you're a bad person. Or it's like, they make a spectacle of them. It's like, oh, there's we sensationalize, like, them going through withdrawals and then whatever. They're never given like any kind of like kindness and affection. And like, I really appreciated that, Moses was treated like with tenderness, and, and also too, what I liked is that the sister, you can see it kind of broke her too in a way, and I think that's the thing about addiction that people sometimes forget about. Is like they think the addict exists in a vacuum, and that that the addiction doesn't affect the other parties too. So for me personally, it was just like I read that and I was like, oh God, somebody finally gets some of the nuances that like, you never seen talk about. And what I love too that you showed was like, despite her addiction, she was still, willing to do the right thing when she saw something bad happening. And I love that, because too often we see addicts as like, we think of them as complete total moral failures. And like, just because you're an addict, that means you're terrible at everything else in life. Right. It's like, that's not true. So yeah. I really appreciate that story. For me, it was just like the first time I ever really saw that kind of portrayal of a person.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was big.
Yeah. Sorry, I had read it and I couldn't not ask the question. So we can pivot.
Go there. I'm glad you went there.
I mean, I think a lot of people can see themselves in a lot of those positions. Like you have the addict, you have the addict's family who's also affected, and you have kind of this amorphous, kind of nebulous community of people who see the addict and the addiction, still treat them like people, but keep kind of a healthy distance to keep, like the waitress in the diner who's like aware of the conditions of her regulars, but she'll look out to you while you're there, but once you're not, can't put too much thought in it because you have your own life. Right. So I want to thank Zac Brown Band for that one song that inspired some part of this, specifically the dancing in the diner scene. I don't even remember the name of the song right now, but it's very good and very, very effective, and so it worked out. But I mean, I hope it ends up, reprinted in more places, because I think, I've been watching people's reactions as they watch Euphoria.
Yeah.
Their reactions to Rue and her behaviors, and I see how far we have to go in kind of humanizing certain elements of addiction.
I haven't watched that show because, like, honestly, I'm scared of being triggered by it. So I like
it's a lot, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like I'm like, I don't think I can watch that right now. I keep seeing people talk about it. It's like I don't know if I'm like, because I'm sure like there's incidents in there that are just gonna like mirror experiences I've been through, and I'm just like, nope, I don't think I'm mentally.
It's intense, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's what I liked about yours is that like. There was some definitely darker moments in Moses, but again, like at its core, there was like a lot of like compassion. And, I think that's what I feel like is missing from a lot of stories about addiction is compassion for all the people involved in it. Not even just the addict or, the addict's lover or that family member or whatever. Like you had compassion for everyone in the story. So yeah, I just really appreciate it.
I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, no, it was when you first told me you were doing it, I was like, oh, I knew it was going to hit me hard no matter what. But like when I actually read it, I was like, oh, damn, like this is so much better and more nuanced than like so many other depictions of addiction I've ever read. So yeah, you did a really great job. But Okay, so I do know how to pivot away. We're not going to sit in the heaviness, I promise.
All right.
So you did mention music. I know music and playlists are like a huge part of your writing process, right? See, I saw your face.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when approaching the playlist for like your writing, are you coming up with the playlist beforehand, or are you kind of like adding songs as you go, or like how do you kind of build the musical aspects of your writing?
Most stories I start are inspired by a song. So, what is my novella title? Rune of Shadows was inspired by Lupe Fiasco's Hello Goodbye. Moses had Zach Brown Band's Colder Weather. There was some SZA song that helped flesh out the atmosphere for, what is that thing that I wrote for Dizzy, The Dead Withheld, whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So usually I start out with a song or whatever, and that helps me set tone, or it helps sets character motivation. And then I'll do some writing, and kind of when the vibrancy or the colors dim down on that, like, okay, I've gone as far as I can with this thematically. I'll kind of root around for songs, or at least return to artists that I know have a certain atmosphere about their writing. Like Hosier has, a very definitive kind of style, and has inspired Deep Blue. So I have a song for everything. Yeah, I'll return to those artists, or I'll seek out songs with a certain tempo or in a certain genre to help me get through an action scene or a particularly emotional scene. And then they all just kind of, they come together, and I end up usually with like 15, 20 songs for longer works. For shorter ones, I'm usually around 5 to 10, something like that.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. See, okay, so
And do you just have these playing while you're writing? Like, I gotta know a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brent.
If there are songs with like a lyrical relevance or whatever, I'll jot those down so that I can kind of keep those, I guess present or top of mind or something. But for the most part, I'm there for the instrumentals.
Okay.
So it doesn't distract you, because I know some people say it doesn't do it to me, but like it doesn't distract you when you hear like lyrics as you're writing.
No, because for me with the color and sound thing, I hear more of the instrumentals and the whatever. It's a long day. I hear less of the lyrics and more of, I guess, the stuff that I need from the song.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem kind of parsing that.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. So I'm trying to think now where I wanted to go with this, because I had a line of thought, and I was like, wait, lost it. I got so much listening into you, I lost my train of thought. So okay, fun question. So let's just say, we have a book out there in the world, and you get approached to have someone do the soundtrack for it. Who are we getting? Or is it going to be, do you have like a dream artist, or is it going to depend on the project?
Ramin Djawadi scores it. Depending on, I think it depends on the story, what like, or Labyrinth could get in there too. I would love to see a collaboration between the two of them.
That'd be cool, actually. That would
be very cool.
Yeah. All right. Well,
now I want that and like nothing else now.
Yeah. See. Okay. So this is one thing I also do with Elle in our conversations. I just create more work for her, because I'm always
yes.
I'm always asking questions and like, well, what about this? Are you working on this? Well, what about this character? So I don't know. I really want to ask about her, but I don't know if I can. You know, my absolute favorite, my girl. Yes.
Yeah.
So I have a favorite character that Ellen has written, and it's not in the published work, but oh my god, it is such a I literally, if this when no not even when this book is out in the world, I will be its loudest cheerleader, and I will fight anybody who tries to pretend like they're loud. I love everything about this book, and there's a character in there, and she is devastatingly beautiful and heartbreaking, and she makes me so sad every time I think about her because I just really I love her. I love her, and I see her, and I just want to go give her a hug. But she's like this completely tragic, beautiful character, and I think there's a through line between all of your works of these like people who are so very competent, but there's like a core of them that's kind of like twisted and sort of a little bit broken. So what drives you to those kind of characters? Like what kind of like makes you want to write that?
Corinne is a secondary character in you remember I mentioned the novel from the gargantuan thing that got me my agent. So she's a tertiary or secondary character in that trilogy, and is wildly talented, but also has is also in very great need of therapy. There's some familial things there. There's parental abandonment or whatever, but she's incredibly powerful and very, very smart and just prone to and bipolar, and is just prone to making disastrous decisions that ruin her relationships with the people who love her. So all of that said, I don't like the flattening of characters as good or evil or moral or whatever. There is a complexity there. Now, there's a complexity there that if you're a villain, should firmly keep you in the villain camp, and you shouldn't be this entity to be empathized with, because I think once you consume too many of those characters, you kind of lose that gauge for what an actual bad person is if you're constantly trying to, because bad people do exist. So if you're constantly trying to humanize them and understand them, I think you're going to be very unable to punch them in the mouth when necessary. Talking about Nazis. For my characters, I like all of my main characters are ostensibly women or femme. And we have complex experiences, and I like to get those things on the page in a way that doesn't force the good or bad determination on them. They can be complex. They can be heartbreaking. They can they can end up being someone that you ultimately root for, but none of those things make them a good or bad person. And so everybody's got some shit that they're going through, and my characters have some shit that they're working through. And in the course of, the story that I'm telling about them, it's essentially just a sliver of their entirely lived lives. And so I like to get as much of their life, the personality traits about them that would be unpopular or something. Those things don't stop just for the purpose of me having to tell this window of a story. The trauma that they suffered in the past, whatever lies in their future, all of that stuff, continues, and I'm just picking a segment of their life to put on the page. So if everybody's complicated, then no one is.
I like that. Well, so yeah, Marsh, you got something there?
No, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Well, I like how you said like some people are just bad people, because I wanted to bring up Chesirah, and like the guy that captured her, he is just a bad person.
Just
like,
a bad person.
There's no sugarcoating it. There's no getting around it. And I think that you doing that made the story a lot more powerful for Chesirah, because a lot more cathartic for sure, because there's like no negotiation on this guy being a miserable person. And so I guess what I want to ask on that is, when you were writing that story, I know sometimes there's a pressure on Black writers to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, to empathize, I guess, or navigate the humanity of these awful people. And what would you say to any writer who is struggling with that idea?
Just write the damn story. It's if you are writing a story or writing a character with the express goal of giving the audience a certain impression of them, I think at that point the character ceases to be fully human or fully realized, because you're only highlighting certain things about them that are going to give, the desired impression. If you're a slave owner, you're an asshole, and that's, open and closed. There's no nothing there. It's like, oh, well, he was wealthy, and he, that's just the time he grew up in. This is entirely normal. No, nope, no. So Chesirah was of a race of beings that ended up enslaved. I intentionally gave her. She existed with a power that made her essentially physically untouchable, because I hate having the immediate identification of enslaved women as going toward, sex trafficking. So these people kept her for reasons other than, what you think. She existed kind of as a living art piece. And didn't want to do that anymore. And so her ultimate decision to escape that type of bondage, but not to immediately go back and Harriet Tubman the shit and go and find some other people to liberate, that can be read as a selfish reaction, or it can be read as actually the more normal thing. We know Harriet Tubman because she was, of a select few people who ended up, free, who went back. But a lot of people just ended up free and went on about their lives. So that's not a moral or an amoral situation, but, not everybody's going to, grow up to lead a movement.
Right.
So it's always important to me to be like, okay, well, I'm not trying to make Chesirah the hero of anything except her own story. And I think that with a lot of Western storytelling, we are kind of inclined to make a hero out of somebody, in order to, I really don't know why, but because that's the common thing to do, and also the most boring thing to do. I'm never interested in doing that with any of my characters.
But what I liked about the end of this piece was that there is that consideration. There's that line there that says, a niggling itch beneath her skin suggests perhaps that in deciding to escape, she had also decided to abandon. Like, that's a really powerful line, because again, you're not writing a Harriet Tubman character, but you're writing someone who has escaped, that is free. You're dealing with that freedom, and then maybe one day, and there's that little bit of hope, you kind of leave at the end there, but again, it's about her freedom. And I think, I don't know, I love the end of the story. So I think you really nailed that aspect of that. Like, there's going to be that little bit of guilt. Like, I didn't help more people maybe, but at the same time, like, there's that whole, you got to help yourself before you can help others,
Right. Yeah. She's just getting free. She doesn't know what to do with this. She doesn't know what she'd even be leading people into.
Exactly.
And so I think we kind of gloss over that phase of the hero story. It's the learning how to be a hero part. Not saying that that's her goal or anything, but we don't go immediately from, I freed myself, I'm going to free the rest of y'all right now and like there's no planning in between. And
Right.
I like to show the plan. And we don't get to because it doesn't move the plot forward fast enough. But it's something worth considering if we are going to write a hero narrative.
Also, like you said, she doesn't know where she's going yet. So how can she lead others to where she doesn't even know where she's going? And I think that's an important thing to consider too with that. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Go ahead, Brent.
No, you go ahead, Marshall.
No, I was just saying we're getting towards the end of our time, so we got to figure out if you have another question, throw it out there. Otherwise, we got to get to the last ones.
I don't have I do have one. Okay, one. Just this last one.
Okay, I'll be quick.
So when you are world building, how do you approach systems of oppression in your world building?
How do I approach systems of oppression? I make sure that they are, I think I keep probably the classist oppression just because that's the one that doesn't lean as much on race-based trauma for me. And I think that's the one that's most resonant, wherever you are in the world. And I keep it because growing up in an imperialist society, that is like the root of my existence, right? Like that's what I know about existing in a human condition. Like that's where my head is. So I try to make sure that the guilty parties have not nuance to them, but at least an interesting, reason for why they're doing what they're doing. We know that it's objectively bad, but we want to get, why this character thinks that it isn't, or why they're okay with it being bad. That's something that we don't get to see a lot. Like, yes, I know this is terrible and I love it. It's great. It's I love being the bad guy. We don't see enough of that. But they exist. But they're not the root of the story ever. It's a background detail. It's an environmental thing. And the characters within the story, they will float in and out of it, over the course of their arc. They will have encounters with it. But I think very rarely will I have them be the person that's just like, I'm going to take the system down. Because again, hero narrative, it's trite. It's been done. I'll leave that for I'll leave that for someone else. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad I stuck that last one in. Marshall, you want to lead us with the last question?
I almost sort of had another question, but I don't know if I want to throw it out there. I mean, do you have time for just one more little?
Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things we didn't really touch on, and we don't have to even talk about this if you don't want to, but one of the reasons we have this Just Keep Writing While Black section of our show is just the things that are specific to Black and marginalized writers, right? So do you have, as far as world building goes, because I feel like that's what we've talked a lot about, what is some advice maybe you can give? I mean, I don't know how good you are about wanting to give people advice, but advice to other Black authors, aspiring authors, however you want to say it, or marginalized authors that will help them navigate in this murky, weird publishing world that we're all trying to get into. Does that make sense? Like advice as far as not just what will help them stand out, but just what can you tell them to help us out?
I'd say first, I'm like caveat, don't listen to me, but be persistent. So I received 149 rejections before I landed my agent.
Oh shit.
But this is also, I also got my agent on the first book I queried. A lot of people don't get their agent to their fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh book. And even then might not sell. So all of these journeys look different. But you have to be persistent. You have to have actual faith in and a love for the story you're writing, because at the end of the day, whether you progress at all in your publishing pursuits, the one truth has to remain that you are happy with the story. you have to be your target audience, or else that, like, even if this does go somewhere else, you will be disappointed in yourself for having put out work that you didn't believe in the first place, and having that be the thing that you're known for. So be persistent, be humble enough to accept criticism where necessary, but also be bold enough to tell people to fuck off when, the criticism is not in line with your ideal for the story you were trying to tell. And I think a lot of this is about navigating that very narrow space between knowing when to accept the criticism and when to tell people to fuck off. So, be careful who you say fuck off to.
Yeah.
It could end up shooting you in the foot at some point. Be gracious in all communications. You don't know who knows who. And find friends within, find a fellowship or a merry band of, fellow struggling writers, who you can take the complaints and the tears and the other things to. Because if you leave that shit on Twitter, it's going to come back to bite you. So leave it with people you can trust to keep it. That's probably it.
I'm so glad I asked that question. Thank you for that answer. I really do appreciate you so much. Okay, so my last question before I'm going to turn it to Brent for the actual last question. I have links in the show notes for this episode to the 3 stories that we spoke about this evening. But where's the best place for people to find you online, website, Twitter, whatever that might be, so we can get in the show notes where they can find your work and that kind of stuff?
Sure. So I am mostly on Twitter at LTheVillain, ELLETHEVILLAIN, for obvious reasons. I am also at ldlewiswrites.com, which is where I keep the list of all of the things I've published or will be publishing. My blog, I don't keep up enough. I probably should. I'm lazy. I don't know what to tell you. I am kind of on Instagram, but not really. I think the most recent thing I put on there was my would-be Hugo acceptance speech had we won the best related work category, which is fine. I mean, like, Brent and I divvied up the speeches, so we won for the magazine. He read the magazine one. I just put the other one up on Instagram because why not? I am same handle over there, ELLE the villain. I have a short story forthcoming from Lightspeed sometime in the next couple of months. Last Stand of the East 12th Street Pirates. It is very stressful, in the vein of Moses, so I apologize in advance.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait.
It's so good. It's such a good story.
Let's see. Oh, God. Yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Well, before Brent asks this question, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show. You're awesome. And I hope we can do this again. So, Brent, I'm going to let you ask the last question to take us out, buddy.
All right. So this is our last question. We ask it of all of our guests. So what keeps you writing?
God, my head would just explode if I stopped, wouldn't it? I haven't stopped to figure it out, but that's what it feels like. I write because I have a lot of stories in me, and that's the only way to purge them. I wish I had something loftier. Like, I write for the little L deep inside me who never had. No, I don't care about her. She's dead. It's fine. I'm really just here because I want to see cool shit in the world, and nobody knows what I'm talking about unless I write it. And I'm like, this is cool shit. Here you go. But I hope that's sufficient.
Oh, that's more than sufficient.
Oh, it is. You might be our first head explosion one. I like that.
Yeah, no, literally. Yeah, I think she's we're the first person to say the head explosion, but I think a lot of people will totally vibe with that answer.
Oh, so, for sure. Oh, man. All right. Well, thanks again so very much. Hopefully we can do this again.
I'd love to.
All right. Well, there we go. That's our episode. Our last Just Keep Writing While Black of Black History Month. What a way to close it out. Thank you again for listening. And thank you, Elle, for taking the time to come and talk to us.
My pleasure.
Awesome. And this has been Just Keep Writing, a podcast for writers, by writers, to keep you writing. You can find us at justkeepwriting.org. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Feel free to reach out to any of us on our social medias, and please jump in our Just Keep Writing Discord channel. Links to all of that is in the show notes. Lastly, please support our show by going to patreon.com/justkeepwriting. We offer daily writing prompts, early access to podcast episodes, and much more. Thanks for listening, and just keep writing.